The meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority Citizens Advisory Committee is now in session. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to ask if all participants please have your phones either on vibrate or off. I know some of us might need to take a call or something. If that's the case, we ask that you step outside, please, and take your call there. Just a reminder that in the meeting, everyone will be heard. Please wait to be recognized and prior to speaking, and turn your speaker voice microphone on. And then turn it off when you're no longer speaking. And we do have a quorum. So we'll start the agenda with public comment. I don't have any request slips, and do we have any public comments? No. Okay, so then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of summary actions. If you would please look at your attendance log, and if there are any discrepancies. This is my fourth meeting today, so my voice is a little raspy, and I
move approval of the summary actions.
And I would like for you to look at your roster. And yes, I haven't asked for a motion yet.
Okay.
Thank you. And if you look at your roster, and JP, I don't know if you've requested from the city clerk to extend. Good. And Michael, you'll need to be asking your city clerk to extend.
Did that.
You did that? Super. Millard, you need to ask your city clerk to extend because your term is August 2017, so that's coming up. Okay, so all you need to do is send an email to the city clerk if you want to extend.
I'll be talking to him.
Okay. And Mark, have you sent an email to the city clerk?
Well, if you notice, I'm through the 19.
I have here March 2017.
You're looking at the old ones then. Let's look at this month's. Look at this month's, August 2019, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, good. Mine says 2017, that's why I mentioned it.
On the summary?
I don't need to look anymore, thanks. And I think that's it. So, yes, Stephen, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Move to approve the summary of actions.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the summary. Do you have a second? JP, a second. And all those in favor, please notify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Any abstentions? All right, so then it's been approved. So the next item on the agenda is the election of the chair and vice chair. And I have a few comments on that. We have our co-chair who traditionally moves into the position of chair, and then that leaves the position of co-chair open. No one has sent me any notice so I could post it in advance, so I will open it up to the floor. I do want to let you know that I've met with Lindsay Willis, who's the executive director for Government and Community Relations, and she and I spoke at length about some of the things that I thought should be addressed that over the years sitting as a member and this year sitting as a chair, I wanted to propose and ensure that you move forward with it. So you'll be here, everyone's hearing this for the first time. But I do want on the agenda, and she agrees, is that, and I don't know where exactly on the agenda, that all of us be given about 2 minutes to give an overview of what's going on in our particular city. So just something very, very brief. The other thing is, she and I spoke, And the comment that I made was, as representatives, I want to make sure that our time here is, for lack of a better word, useful. That in fact that we are giving up our time and we're coming here, and that we engage more with our own city council members. We engage in public events. Some of us have asked for tours, and Matt Kelly is working on that. But there are certain events, I think that as members, we should be part of it. So, and something that Lindsay had said, for instance, groundbreaking, or when the Transportation Board reports to our particular city council, that we're invited and that we're present, so that it raises our position and our visibility to the board members and to the Board of Supervisors, and as we move forward. So I just wanted you to know that that's what's in place, and Matt Kelly has worked very hard to put together another opportunity for us, and one of it is when the cities report back for their compliance checklist, that we look at it as a region. So, for instance, I'll take my region, the Loma Linda region, so that Lafayette, Orinda, Moraga, we look at our compliance checklist, and the suggestion is that we come forward in a specific time frame, and that's when we present our checklist to the CCTA. It's not necessarily, Matt's got a lot of work to do to see if that can occur, but I see that as a huge benefit to the particular cities that it embraces. So again, mine, which is Loma Linda, we're putting our checklist together. I think it will provide an opportunity for Loma Linda to collaborate as we put our checklist together and say, yeah, we're going to put this because we need these particular streets, and we need to make sure that we're looking at pedestrian bicycles that are going to traverse Loma Linda, and also for us to sort of like nudge each other and say, don't forget, we've got that checklist that's due in 2 months. That's when we're due. So that's the intent of proposing something like that. And again, that would be up to Matt to see if it can be done. But I love that idea. And I think that the other cities will like it too. I think they'll find it an opportunity to work together, and maybe one city bring another city up and present it in a format and a time that we're not looking at 6 or 7 checklists in one evening, and then our eyes are crossing. And dare I say it, that by the time we get to the 6th or 7th compliance checklist, it's yeah, whatever. Yeah, sounds good, goodbye. I'd rather not. So those are some of the things that Lindsay and I talked about as we move forward to the next year. So anyway, for you to know. Okay, so I'll open the floor to nominations for chair.
I nominate Michael Dupre.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations? Okay, so we have a nomination for Michael Dupre for chair. Michael, do you accept?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so Michael will be chair. And now we'll open the floor for co-chair.
Madam Chair, I apologize for failing to express my interest earlier, but I would appreciate being considered for the position of Vice Chair.
Okay, we have Mark Roberts for the position to be considered vice chair. Anyone else?
I'll nominate Mark Roberts.
I would be interested in
All right.
being considered as well, and I did send you a email regarding the presidency. Maybe you didn't get it.
Okay, so we have two positions, two names, excuse me, for the position of co-chair. Anyone else? I would like to throw my name in as for co-chair also, to support Mike, because I know that he just told me today, he has negotiations for the next,
10 years. Whenever UC caves in,
okay, so one negotiation a month.
roughly, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so with that, I would like you to, how would we do this, Diane?
You want to have a first word first, thinking first. So I need a second. You want to nominate Robert as vice chair.
Okay, so I have a first from Mark for vice chair. I need a second, please. Okay, we have a second. Thank you.
And I did somebody nominate?
And we have a nomination on the floor for Millard. So we have a motion to consider Millard for vice chair. Linda, thank you. Okay, I'll retract. So we have Mark and we have Millard. I think, well, I had initially wanted to continue to work forward with Lindsay and Matt, but I think I can do that as the former chair.
I'd like to nominate Yolanda Vega as co-chair.
And thank you, JP. I think that I'd rather see another person have the opportunity to lead. Thank you so much, JP. I appreciate that. So moving forward, we have two people to consider for co-chair, and we can't do this. I'll wait for Diane. I know, I think it's wonderful.
Chair, I have a first and a second for Roberts, so I think we need to find out how many agree, get a consensus on that. I don't have a second for Lark.
Yeah.
I have a Manina for,
Oh, then I'll second Lord, yeah.
I thought Linda seconded the Lard.
I thought I did,
Yeah.
did I not? I have you as a first. I don't have a second. He nominated himself, so I had you as a first, and I need a second. Yeah. I thought I was seconding. Okay. Okay, I'm confused. So if we can pull the,
Okay, so we'll do a show of hands.
that would be good for Roberts, how many? And then for Larkin, how many?
Okay, so show of hands for Mark Roberts, co-chair. Will you please raise your hand if you are voting for him? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And for Millard, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay, so Mark, you're co-chair. Do you want to take over then?
No, you're doing fine. Next meeting.
So for our next meeting, Mark, you will be chair, and Mark, you will be co-chair. So our major discussion this evening will start with the City of San Ramon, and we have the 2014-2015 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist.
Thank you. Good evening. Sorry about that. Good evening, members of the Citizen Advisory Committee. My name is Lisa Babadia, and I'm the Transportation Division Manager with the City of Santa Ramon. I'm very pleased to be here this evening to present our calendar year 14-15 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. Also with me this evening is Cindy Yee. Cindy is an Associate Planner in our Planning Division with the City of Santa Ramon. She's here to answer any planning or housing-related questions. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. I just have a few comments, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have with respect to our checklist. I'm assuming all of you have a copy of the checklist. So let me just take a step back and talk about some of the activities that the City of Santa Ramon participates in on a regional level. So Santa Ramon is unique. Santa Ramon and actually the town of Danville, we're unique in the fact that we participate on 2 regional transportation planning committees. Because of our location in Contra Costa County, we're actually on the border of Alameda County. So in addition to participating on the Southwest Area Transportation Committee, or SWAT, Santa Ramon and Danville are also members of the Tri-Valley Transportation Council. And so we have the opportunity to participate with our neighbors to the south in the Tri-Valley area, that's Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore, and the unincorporated areas of Alameda and Contra Costa County. So we work within the SWAT region, which is Lafayette, Moraga, and Orinda, and the Alamo, or the unincorporated areas in Contra Costa County, particularly Alamo, as well as with our neighbors to the south in the Tri-Valley area. So because of that, we typically work on regional transportation programs with both of those RTPCs, or Regional Transportation Planning Committees. In 2014, the Tri-Valley Transportation Council, which is actually a formal Joint Powers Authority, or JPA, the Tri-Valley Council adopted the action plan for the countywide transportation plan, and that action plan included identifying the Iron Horse Trail through the San Ramon Valley as a route of regional significance. That was a huge endeavor for the Tri-Valley area, and we're proud of the work that was done to identify routes of regional significance as part of our action plan, and then identifying the Iron Horse Trail as a route of regional significance. Also, the Tri-Valley Transportation Council has a region-wide traffic mitigation fee. So the City of Santa Ramon, the town of Danville, Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore, and Contra Costa and Alameda counties, we all charge and collect a regional Tri-Valley fee. So every new development, whether it's housing, retail, or commercial, those developments pay a Tri-Valley transportation fee, and those fees are applied to regional Tri-Valley projects in the corridor. Those projects were already approved by the Tri-Valley Transportation Council, and we collect those fees and we provide funding for those projects on what we call Project A list, or list of projects on what we call List A, and then List B. In addition to that, we also have a Southern Contra Costa regional fee program. So the city and the town also collect regional fees for Southern Contra Costa regional fee program. So all in all, the City of Santa Ramon collects 4 different fees for every new development within the City of Santa Ramon. We have our own City Traffic Impact Fee, or TIF. We have the Southern Contra Costa Regional Fee, the Southern Contra Costa Sub-Regional Fee, and the Tri-Valley Transportation Development Fee. In 2015, the City of Santa Ramon assumed the SWAT Administrative Services role. So the City of Santa Ramon staff, we actually provide staffing services for the Southwest Area Transportation Committee. The City of Santa Ramon has adopted a Climate Action Plan, or CAP, that was adopted in July of 2011. We have since updated our Climate Action Plan. That plan focuses on a number of emission reduction programs throughout the City of Santa Ramon and the San Ramon Valley area. The City of Santa Ramon we also oversee the Southwest Area Transportation Demand Management, or TDM, commute programs. We oversee a number of regional commuter incentive programs. As you all may know, we are home to a regional employment center, the Bishop Ranch Business Park. That employment center generates about 26,000 trips per day. And so it's very important for the city to be proactive and work with our business community to encourage employers to encourage their employees to use some type of commute alternative, whether it's a carpool, van pool, or public transportation. We also work very closely with Sunset Development. They are the owners and the developer of the Bishop Ranch Business Park. They have a very active TDM, or Transportation Demand Management Program. They actually subsidize a number of express buses from the Walnut Creek and Dublin Pleasanton boat stations to and from the Bishop Ranch Business Park. So we're very proud of the relationship that we have established with Bishop Ranch over the years to ensure that we reduce commute trips coming into and out of the city of San Ramon. That's not to say we don't have traffic. I mean, I think every city in this county experiences traffic levels of congestion. We all experience traffic, but we do what we can to encourage the business community to reduce those trips. And we've had a significant amount of success over the years with our TDM program. In fact, Bishop Ranch is moving forward with the development of San Ramon City Center, and the City Center plan includes a very comprehensive TDM program in which we are encouraging the retail sites of City Center to develop TDM programs, put together what we're calling a TMA, or Transportation Management Association, whereby they will expand the existing transit service that they provide to ensure that all the retail units within City Center provide free public transportation to their employees. So at the local level, San Ramon has 2 advisory committees. We have a citizen-represented transportation advisory committee. We have 7 members of the San Ramon community that are all appointed by the city council. They are on our transportation advisory committee. They meet monthly, and they look at local residential traffic calming. As every city knows, local residential streets, whether you experience people driving too fast on your street or too many cars are on your street, the way we work with our citizens is we have a citizen-based advisory committee. And that committee, again, meets monthly, and we address local transportation or residential transportation calming issues. At the local level, we are also working to move forward with a project that we have been very supportive with over the years. It is to construct an overcrossing, or a bike ped overcrossing, along the Iron Horse Trail at Bollinger Canyon Road. We have received funding over the course of the last few years to do a conceptual design. We have finished the preliminary review with our city council. We've identified 2 bridge structures for Bollinger Canyon Road and 1 structure for Crow Canyon Road. And just this past few months, we've submitted applications for the One Bay Area Grant Program, which I'm sure you'll hear more about. And we are anticipating receiving funding so we can move forward with the Iron Horse Trail final design and construction. The Iron Horse Trail overcrossing at Bollinger Canyon Road is directly linked to our PDA, or our priority development area, and so it's our desire to continue to reduce commute trips into the PDA area by providing an overcrossing that will alleviate at-grade crossings at Bollinger Canyon Road for cyclists and for pedestrians. So we hope to move forward with construction of the Iron Horse Trail within the next 2 to 3 years. We also have just a few other programs at the local level. We have a Safe Routes to School program. We work with all 12 of our elementary schools to ensure that students are provided with the safest way to get to and from school. We provide maps to the school sites, encouraging students to use a suggested route to school where we know we have four-way stop sign or stop control, traffic signals, and or crossing guards at these locations. We also have a valley-wide program called Street Smarts. It's a cooperative program with the town of Danville, the school district, Contra Costa County, and the fire district. The Street Smarts program, the primary emphasis is to educate students and parents about safe driving, safe biking, and safe walking to and from the school sites. It's a very active program. We've had it in place for the last 10 years. We've received grants, federal grants, the last 4 years, so we've expanded that program. So we're actually doing assemblies and bike rodeos on school sites, at least 15 assemblies per spring and per fall. And so at the end of the day, our goal is to educate students to and from school and educate the parents about safe driving habits when they're approaching school sites. And then lastly, the growth management program, I'm sure all of you are aware, most cities use these funds for pavement management. Santa Ana uses about 100% actually of our return to source funding for our pavement management program. We are fortunate that our PCI, our pavement cost index, recently has been upgraded to 80, which is a very high pavement condition index for the Bay Area. I believe the Bay Area average is 62 or 63. So we're proud of that, but that's not to say that we don't continue to use the pavement management funds or the growth management program funds to pave our roads and to make sure we maintain a high PCI. It is the City Council's priority to maintain a high PCI. They put a lot of emphasis into that. We do apply general funds to our pavement management program to ensure that the compliance checklist funds that we receive are complemented by city general funding as well. And so that just gives you an overview of some of the regional and local transportation programs and activities that we engage in at the City of San Ramon. And I know Linda Molina is our representative from the City of San Ramon, and I'm sure she can attest to some of the things that we do at the city. Or if we're not doing something, she certainly tells us or provides us feedback. And so with that, it's been a pleasure to be here this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What questions do you have or comments?
I have a comment. First of all, I think the programs that you have are very good programs. I'm one of the people that always asks about housing. I don't think we, and I've said this many times, I don't think we get enough information in advance. But this is pretty comprehensive regarding transportation, and I'm always looking past transportation because I think transportation, though it is our the start of our building block, I think we need to employ people. I think, and one of the things that I'd like to know, when we do these is what the median incomes are. Not just the median income, but what low income is, and that kind of better help me to understand, exactly what's going on. And sometimes I like to. It'd be nice to know an ethnic breakdown of, the housing. Job opportunities. The transportation is, I like what you guys did.
Would that be something you would like us to follow up with you? We can certainly provide it in a follow-up memo.
I ask for these same things every year, and I never see them back, but I would certainly like to see a follow-up, and thank you for mentioning that.
Other comments or questions?
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
I just have a question about Iron Horse Trail, since it's in my backyard for the most part. When you're putting up the bridge, which I actually voted on, I think 2 years ago, we actually voted on it. Will there be like lanes for the bicycles? Because right now when you're walking on Iron Horse Trail, and if you happen to have music on and there's a bicycle behind you, you don't hear their little horns or their bells or anything. So I was wondering if we're planning on making a roadway basically for the bicycles and then a side for the pedestrians.
It's a very good question. Contra Costa County, as part of the One Bay Area Grant Program, has requested funding, I believe it's $350,000, to conduct a study along the Iron Horse Trail to consider cycle tracks. Cycle tracks would be a dedicated lane strictly for cyclists. So you would have a lane for cyclists, and then you would have a part of the trail for pedestrians. And so it's our understanding that funding from Central County and South County is being applied for this grant, for this study, and then Contra Costa County Public Works Department will take the lead on this study, and they'll work with San Ramon and Danville and Alamo, and then I would imagine that results of those study at some point would be available for this group as well. But that is something that they are considering. But it's a very good point, Linda. I mean, the trail, certain parts of the trail today are very congested.
Mike?
Yeah, I like that idea. I've been on the Iron Horse Trail. My question is a little bit broader. We've been seeing out in the East Bay, and I'm sure around here, the movement of people out of California and movement from San Francisco area, San Jose, South Bay, out to the lesser expensive areas. And I wanted to find out if if San Ramon has figured out how to mitigate or slow down gentrification and keep rent under control so that the lower income folks aren't priced out of the market.
I'm going to defer this housing-related question to Cindy.
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to address the committee. My name is Cindy Yee. I'm with the city's planning department. I work primarily in long-range and short-term planning, but on the other side, I also work on housing programs. So I oversee our city's housing advisory committee as well as, excuse me, the update of our housing element. Our housing element was just adopted last year, or I should say 2015 now. And a lot of the focus in our housing element review was on special needs groups, those being single-parent households or our seniors and other groups that typically you see affected by gentrification. So a number of our policies that we've added into our housing element this last cycle really address those the needs of those special needs groups. There was a huge desire in our community to look at senior housing and additional opportunities for senior housing. We're finding that in San Ramon, because it is such a high income area and the housing prices are already high, the people who are most affected by gentrification tend to be the senior population. So we've had a huge focus in trying to put more money into senior housing programs. We have a project, actually, the city is a co-applicant on currently that is building 95 senior housing units on a city-owned redevelopment property in San Ramon. And so a lot of our focus has been to really try to look at a number of programs that would help with these special needs groups. But we don't see a lot of issues with gentrification in San Ramon in particular, again, because of the high cost of housing already that has been kind of part of that region's area. But a number of programs that we've created in our housing element to try to speak to some of those issues that you've raised.
Well, when I'm talking about the lower income folks, and seniors are certainly fixed income, but I'm talking about the service people, the gardeners, the yard workers, the store clerks. Has anybody done any research to see where they're driving from or riding from? Because the highways are packed, and the closer they can live to work, the better off they would be. It would be nice to see that in part of every city's planning.
So we have not done any studies in recently to look at where workers are coming from and where their commute is to get to San Ramon. Part of the city's ultimate goal is to adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance this year that would require a percentage of the development in San Ramon to provide at least 15% of units that are being constructed for the lower income households. We're also this year developing a priority access list that would identify special needs groups that first responders, teacher groups, single-parent households, groups that would get priority access to affordable housing. And so those are programs that are identified for this upcoming year for our Housing Advisory Committee, and looking to establish those programs so that when the units are being constructed, that they're focused towards those particular groups of people.
Would the city be willing to look at a minor study or a survey, as it were? For example, I know that sources of information of that type could be collected from the local labor councils and the different groups, UFCW for Safeway and Lucky Stores and so forth. Because I know that a lot of those people get shifted around a lot. And we have some folks in Oakley that live out here and vice versa.
So I do have a response for that. So in addition to our Transportation Advisory Committee, the city also has a Transportation Demand Management Advisory Committee. It's made up of 5 members of the business community, and they generally represent large and small businesses. That committee is actually proposing to do a citywide employer transportation survey early next year, 2018. And in that the last time we did a survey at that magnitude was about 4 years ago. And so that survey actually is to do just what you asked for. Where are people coming from? How long is their commute? How are they getting to and from the city of San Ramon? What routes are they using? And that data is very helpful for the city and the region to identify programs that we may or that we should be offering for commuters. It's helped Bishop Ranch put together shuttles from the East County area. They currently run shuttles from the Antioch or the Hillcrest Park and Ride Lot to the Walnut Creek BART station, and then from BART into San Ramon. And so that data will be available, and the next time we come to this committee with our annual compliance checklist, we can have results from that study. So it's a very good question. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, Mark?
This is actually both for Lisa and Cindy. I come from a city where you could look at one individual development will provoke all sorts of discussion within the community. I'm just looking at San Ramon. We look at Doherty Valley and the many thousands of units that housing units have been added over the past 10 or 12 years. Has the reality matched the plan, so to speak, in terms of that you had the opportunity to basically essentially do a master plan for Doherty Valley in terms of transportation, schools, and housing? I'm just curious, has everything kind of come to fruition basically as you planned it, or have there been some surprises, pleasant or unpleasant?
Well, I can speak to the housing side, and as you might be aware, Doherty Valley is a master plan community of 11,000 units, and we are approaching almost build out of that plan. They've got a few thousand units left to go, but of those units, half of those are going to be rental units, and so those will come in large parcels. On the housing side, the Doherty Valley plan is very unique in the sense that the project requires a 25% must build of affordable units for that project. And so in order for the project to get their building permits, they have to hit targets as they are being constructed for affordable housing. And so they are on target to meet all 25% of units that are actually going to be constructed for that project in the Doherty Valley.
And then also, I'll just add, with respect to transportation, the SCC JIPA program, the traffic fee program that I referred to earlier, that program is a direct result of the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement. And so the city, the town of Danville, and Contra Costa County, for every unit in the Doherty Valley, we collect a traffic mitigation fee for regional and sub-regional projects. And so San Ramon has moved forward with a number of infrastructure improvements and roadway construction to accommodate the growth in the Doherty Valley. In addition, several years ago, the county enacted a transit fee. So every unit in the Doherty Valley, or actually I think it was after the 35th after the 3,000th unit, I believe. We're now collecting a $429 fee per unit for transit. So that allowed County Connection to provide additional service to the Dougherty Valley area, and quite frankly, that service has been very successful. What we have found in the Dougherty Valley, we have a large segment of the community that are transit dependent. And so we see a large number of people riding public transportation in the Dougherty Valley and coming to the city requesting additional service.
Other comments, questions? I have several observations. When you mentioned the transportation fee, I think of ceremony and I immediately think of Bishop Ranch, just, so visible and wonderful and very exciting area. And that the business owners there actually provide transportation service from the BART station to their offices and back. What else is BART or the service? Where else is it being utilized in the San Ramon downtown area?
So the service that Sunset Development subsidizes today is express hour service to and from Walnut Creek and Dublin Pleasanton BART station. But one of the conditions, or some of the conditions of approval for City Center includes running midday shuttle service. So when the retail component of City Center is built, Sunset is conditioned to provide midday shuttle service. So we're currently working with them on developing that service. They have also embarked with the Transportation Authority on a program called Autonomous Vehicle. They are testing at Bishop Branch autonomous shuttles, and these shuttles are what we envision at the city will be the future of providing a direct link from our transit center to the retail and the business park within the city of San Ramon, and then to some of our other areas outside of the Bishop Branch Business Park. So not only do we condition Sunset Development, but all the other development that is taking place within the city, whether it's in our northwest area or our Crow Canyon Specific Plan area, those developers are also conditioned to provide transit, either transit subsidies, transit shelters, and or amenities along the roadways that will improve transit or carpool or van pool accessibility.
So that transportation then is pretty much focused on from BART bus to their particular business and back.
Well, we also have what we call fixed route service with County Connection. So County Connection continues to provide service to the city that's not into the Bishop Branch Business Park. So in addition to the enhanced service that Sunset provides, we also have fixed route service that County Connection provides. Our senior center provides service for our senior community. They run shuttles for our seniors to and from appointments or events. We contract with NV Transportation to provide the senior service, and we also work with County Connection on transit incentives for DVC. We have a DVC campus in San Ramon, and we provide transit incentives for students at DVC, as well as the high schools and the middle schools in the city. So yes, there is a large emphasis on the business park, but then we also look at non-business related trips, whether it's going to the school sites or the midday trips or the late evening and or weekend trips.
And the other point that I wanted to make, you were talking about the Iron Horse Trail and that you've got a dedicated, or the study is going to be looking at a dedicated bike path. And that bike path would be a single bike cyclist, or would that be, as I see in the Lafayette Moraga, that takes up everything? And God help you if you happen to be in the way of the Lance Armstrong's wannabe.
It's to be determined. Contra Costa County will take the lead on this study for the Iron Horse Trail. So the outcome of the study is yet to be determined, but I believe the goal of the county is to look at providing what we call in the transportation world would be a cycle track, where you have just cyclists in one lane along the trail, and then you provide pedestrians with the ability to walk as these individuals are going down the swing track for cycling.
Other questions, comments? So typically what we do is we have the representative of the city make the motion to accept, and we do have her here, Linda, City of San Ramon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we accept San Ramon's 2014-2015 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist, please.
I would.
And I need a second, Millard.
I would second.
Okay, so Millard, we have a first and we have a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. Any abstentions? Okay, so it carries. So then from here, you will go to the Authority Planning Commission, and they're meeting June 7th. And it's their regular meeting, so, please attend because they'll probably will have questions. And then from there, we'll go on to the Authority Commissioners, and they're meeting June 21st. And they will at that point either approve and discuss your city will receive the 2015-2016 funds.
Very good. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Good night. The next item on our agenda is the City of Pittsburgh to present their 2014-2015 growth management checklist. Hi.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Paul Reinders. I work for the City of Pittsburgh, city traffic engineer, and I'm pleased to present Pittsburgh's calendar year 2014-2015 growth management program checklist. Pittsburgh continues to work on its multimodal transportation objectives, including the Complete Streets policy. One of that includes accommodating all transportation users, pedestrians, bicycles, transit, as well as the vehicles. One of the major focuses of Pittsburgh in the last few years has been, a new BART station that's coming to Pittsburgh. The BART station, we've been lucky to get a One Bay Area grant to construct a multimodal transfer facility, which will include a vehicle drop-off, including a place for Uber and Lyft, a transit bus stop with shelters, plenty of bicycle parking, as well surface parking, as well as covered storage of bicycle parking. And we're also looking at constructing a lot of Class 1 trails that lead up to this station to encourage bicycle and walking. We're also looking at applying for another One Bay Area grant to construct additional trails and the city's first Class 4 bike lane on Railroad Avenue that leads up to this station. And that's a separated bikeway, which provides a nice, safe, wide path for the bicycles on Railroad Avenue.
I have a quick question. What's the classifications? 1, 2, 3? What
Yes,
does that mean?
Well, really quickly, Class 1 is a shared multi-use trail for bike and peds, minimum of 8 feet wide. And then you have Class 2, which is an on-street bicycle lane that's striped and signed for bicycle use only. And then you have Class 3, which is a shared situation on a shared roadway. You share the bicycles share the space with vehicles, but it's a route, usually designated route for the bicycles. And then Class 4 is kind of new in the last few years. It's a separated bikeway. It's similar to a Class 2 bike lane, although it's separated by at least, I think, 3 feet from the travelway from the vehicles. Going back, so what has Pittsburgh done in 2014-15? We continue to work on a lot of the regional projects, such as the State Route 4 and the BART extension out to Antioch. And we're also looking at, we also are transit-oriented development around this new station we're looking at, and the only general plan amendment we had in 2014-15 was converting some office space to, I believe, a dozen or so apartments, and that, again, it was surrounded by residential uses, and I can't think of anything else I wanted to present, but anyways, I'm open for questions.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I know you guys have gone through a lot of changes over the years, and looking forward, 2019 is expected to be kind of a recession beginning again. And I would ask the same question of you that I did. Oh, yeah, I'll tell you about it later. It's statistics. But, again, all of the Far East Bay is going through this process of gentrification, people moving out. Do you guys have, in your city government, a policy or plan to help control rent and gentrification?
Well, we usually haven't had a problem. We're certainly building affordable housing. In 14-15, we did approve a 250 apartment development that was affordable. Not aware of anything specific, but I can certainly carry that back.
My other question is James Donellan Parkway and extending it to Kirker Pass. Is that ever going to happen? Please.
Yes, we certainly hope it will. We're hoping construction in like 2021 to begin construction.
I won't be driving by then.
We have environmental clearance on the project. We have a preliminary design. We're working on some utility relocations, and developer fees are now building up. It's becoming one of the priorities in the region. So again, we plan on having at least 2/3 of the funds in place by 2021. So it's the remaining 30% or so that we're still looking to find.
Other questions, comments? Larry?
Yes, Paul.
Hi, Larry.
In a meeting, I don't know, within the last few months, I can't remember if it was our city manager who mentioned it or not. Maybe it was Buck Buchanan. I can't remember. But there was mention made of a new material that the city had come across for patching roads. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and I wondered if you can report whether that's proven to be as superior as earlier reported.
I'm not entirely sure of what they were talking about, if there's a new fabric or something that they're using, but I know the city has been successful in the last 3 or 4 years with a 3-layer system. It's a kind of a micro-surfacing, cheaper than an overlay, an asphalt overlay. It's been holding up very well. We've done quite a few streets with that like 4 years ago, and again, they're still looking, not a crack on them. Again, then there's also the rubberized asphalt that we've used. That remains very long life, cost effective.
I would think it'd be of interest to every city. Anything that would save money in terms of repairing the streets and maintaining the avenues, streets, and roadways of each city. So I'm sure this is not a big secret, so I'm sure that other cities must be aware of this too.
Trying to stretch our pavement dollars, yes.
Other comments or questions? I always think of Pittsburgh. When I think of Pittsburgh, I always think of that's where people moved because there was affordable housing there. And while the commute was a long one, people felt that it was worth it. They got a beautiful home in a beautiful area. Pittsburgh is a very nice looking area, and you guys have done that waterfront. Looks really good. Plus, you have a great Mexican restaurant there. And so for me, you know, I hope you don't lose that. I hope you don't lose that attraction that people feel, especially with BART coming in, and keep my fingers crossed, we'll go out to Antioch and hopefully Brentwood, Oakley, is that people feel I can move to Pittsburgh, I can afford a nice home there, raise my family, live comfortably. And so I want you to think, Livermore, please make sure that you maintain affordable housing there, because it's a great place to be. And I think that given the population growth in the area, I think that Pittsburgh is looked at. I know that Pleasant Hill considers itself the middle of everywhere, which is fine, but I think that Pittsburgh will probably take that one step further. I have a question to ask you about commercial, attracting commerce. And that waterfront is platinum to attract commerce, and I think in terms of not necessarily getting the Silicon Valley commerce up there, but development, manufacturing. What plans does Pittsburgh have for that? And again, you know, what transportation, what kind of housing would you then look at?
We're looking, we have an economic development department who's really, they have a lot of things going on as far as downtown, and the waterfront as well, as well as our BART station. But manufacturing, Dow is just, we recently approved a modernization project for Dow, a large manufacturing employer in Pittsburgh. And we, again, maybe it was before 2014, but K2 Pure, they manufacture some byproduct they turn into chlorine gas or something like that. So we're developing a lot of jobs and a lot of manufacturing, different kinds, and then housing. I mean, we've got it all. So
You've got a set labor pool there. I mean, people moved out to Pittsburgh because they felt that, gee, I can afford to live here. So I'm guessing that as you provide additional jobs, you've got that labor pool sitting right there saying, Pittsburgh sounds better to me than San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Just got to wake up. Well, yeah, if you're going to commute, you have to wake up a little early.
Okay. So other questions or comments? Millard?
Go ahead.
Millard.
Just want to say that Pittsburgh, I'm definitely in favor of Pittsburgh. Though I live in Antioch, I've worked with Pittsburgh on Juneteenth, the Men's Health Fair, for the past 4 or 5 years. Because I think they get it. I think that when you talk about affordable housing, you can look at Pittsburgh and you can find true affordable housing. You can find some real opportunities there. And as far as Pittsburgh and San Francisco, being a former city commissioner from San Francisco, I'd have to say it's not even close. But if I walk out my door, if I walk for 5 minutes, I'm in Pittsburgh. And I would say that I could have afforded to live in San Francisco. And one of the smartest things I did was to listen to my wife and my daughters and move to this area, because it's not the end for this area. It's almost like the beginning. I think that, you know, having lived and having worked with some of the folks, even with the Boys Club now, well, it's not the Boys Club anymore, but citizens got together and reopened it, you know. I see opportunity. I think earlier, back a few years, they did some things. They might have put the cart before the horse. But I'm really hoping that that our politicians and the people that's running Antioch will kind of look at some of the things that's being done in Pittsburgh, because our area is the future if we take advantage of it. Like you said, bringing more opportunities out here, bringing big businesses, taking advantage of our water. In my city, all the businesses face away from the water, even though we don't have much water. But you have to take an advantage. Pittsburgh and Antioch has been what the Warriors used to be to the NBA, a training ground for professionals. And when you're in our cities, oftentimes, if you drive on Saturday, you see all of our traffic going towards either Walnut Creek or in the other direction from Antioch. So I'm glad to hear about the programs. I've said all the nice things. The one thing that I'd like to see happen, I'd like to see more, if possible, you know, African American contractors, builders, particularly general contractors. But thank you.
Sure, I'll bring that back.
I have one quick question. It occurred to me. I haven't been keeping track of this, but cameras on Highway 4, are they going away, or are they
Oh, they're staying. In fact,
outstanding?
there's other counties now that are interested, or the Caltrans now is interested in having their own program. I think Pittsburgh really started something for the whole state. It's been very successful.
Is there any?
It has license plate readers. So again, I don't know how many people they've nabbed, but
Are they considering expanding that to other main
yes,
arteries?
Yes, absolutely. Throughout the Bay Area, all the counties in the Bay Area now want those cameras on their
Pittsburgh.
freeways. I'm sorry?
Not just on the freeways.
Oh,
but
Pittsburgh has. I forgot the last count, but whenever the police give a presentation, they tell us how many cameras they have throughout the city, not counting the ones privately owned, but the city has control of all these cameras throughout the city. So whenever there's crime that occurs, chances are they'll pick them up on one of these cameras that are, you know, on the city's streets. It's very successful. That's why our crime is really low.
Other comments or questions? I think you have maintained a sense of community in Pittsburgh, and I like that. And I like the fact that I hear collaboration between Pittsburgh and Antioch. I think that this BART, the extension, will make that even more of an opportunity to collaborate and work together with your neighboring cities. So I congratulate you.
Thank you.
So we do have a representative from the city of Pittsburgh here, Larry. I would like to open it for you to make a motion.
Thank you. And before I make a motion, I'd like to extend an invitation to everyone, because we have the Seafood Festival in Pittsburgh, which is a wonderful event every year. It draws thousands and thousands of people for a 2-day event from all over the state, and I'm sure if someone could tell us that a lot of people come from out of state and out of country too. So please, if you get a chance to, it's in September. It's the weekend after Labor Day.
So will you make a motion?
Yes, I will. I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2014-2015 compliance checklist of Pittsburgh.
I hear a second. Mark, second. So we have a motion on the floor to accept Pittsburgh's compliance checklist. All those in favor, please vote by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And any abstentions? So it's been passed. And then, Paul, as you know, June 7th is seasoned in this, so you know the drill.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
June 7th is the authorities' regular, the Planning Commission's regular meeting, and then the 21st.
Great.
Okay? Thank you so much, and good luck to you. I just really enjoy going to Pittsburgh. I have a really good, I can't wait until Hillcrest opens.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good luck.
Thank you all.
Next on our agenda is the City of Hercules. Good evening.
Good evening. I haven't been here for about 2 years. I'm Holly Smith. I'm the Planning Director for the City of Hercules, overseeing planning, building, and code enforcement. We're a city of 25,000 persons, and we have only 50 full-time employees, including our police force. So we are a very small but mighty community, and you may recall some colorful history 4, 5, 6 years ago, and really I call myself part of the resurrection team. Part of our update for our GMP checklist, including the 14-15 calendar year, that's actually when I first came on board to City of Hercules as a full-time staffer. And at that time, we approved 147 multifamily units to be reignited. Most of you, if you drive down Highway 80, might have seen for many years a 4-story white building that everybody called Tyvek Towers or the White Elephant. Our mixed-use project of 40,000 square foot footprint at 80 units to the acre is what it was built out as. So we actually sold that property as part of multiple things of closure of redevelopment. We had to sell 3 or 4 parcels after we got them back from Department of Finance. So we got the 147 multifamily units, and it's currently under construction with some retail components in the central courtyard area. Lovely project if you ever have a chance to go by it. That same year, we also issued 43 single-family housing units, which we had not done any subdivision house permits for over 6 years. So 2014 and 2015 was really some large years for us, and fast forwarding to today's date, those 147 units are fully rented up. They're rented up in less than 3 months. And that's a lot of units to get online in place. The 43 housing permits, that subdivision sold out in the first 4 weeks that the trailers hit the market. So that's where we were on the housing side. Now, the cool thing about the multifamily, it's called Aventine. We actually built a separated bike lane to lead more safely between San Pablo at Sycamore Avenue, which is our busiest intersection with, I think it's over 4,000 peak hour trips in our morning hours. And we actually did a road diet so that it street calms as you go down to the Aventine project. It's about a quarter mile from the nearest bus stop and a half a mile from our Hercules Transit Center. So they really did a lot of focus on getting multi-mode people out of their car for that district. And with that district, we formed our very first parking district in town. So we tried to make it very easy, did a 6-page ordinance that said all future parking districts can be formed by resolution of our councils, and all of the specifics of those districts would be defined in those resolutions. Because again, we're a small staff, we have to make things very simple, straightforward, easy to implement. So we did issue 45 parking stalls and shared parking kind of limitations in that area. And so it's really our first experiment in the parking districts. During that period of time, we also approved a project called Sycamore Crossings Project, which was predominantly retail. The only downside is fast forward 2 years later, the company that was originally starting the project broke up, split up, sold off, and they fell out of a sale with the city. And our Safeway project is now moving across the street. So it was a little bit difficult of a site to deal with. Hercules, you may know, was a dynamite town, so we did have lots of areas with lots of challenges anytime you set foot in our jurisdiction. So good news, bad news is that we did resell the project to Lewis Operating Company. They're currently looking at a hotel on that site as well as some retail, and then they are potentially looking at some residential on that piece as well. Additionally, we did do some modifications to our housing related policies in our zoning ordinance. So we, like many cities, got our new housing element with an 8-year cycle. In that 8-year cycle, we went ahead and updated all of our provisions in our zoning ordinance to be able to conform to the new housing element policies. Unfortunately, with the demise of redevelopment, our city could not take on housing after effect types of anything. So when it comes to affordable housing, we used to have a very active affordable housing program, but again, there is no staffing for housing, and basically we just deal with when people are refinancing or selling the homes to take care of that, and still working through the state nor the county want to take on any of the responsibility for any of the follow-up with affordable housing in the region. So other things, we did approve a new subdivision during the 2014 period, which is called Muir Point, which is 144 single-family homes, and it's about a quarter mile from the bay, San Pablo Bay, which is in our waterfront district. As part of that project, we did include conditions of approval to include, we did what's called development agreement, of which they'll be putting in almost $100,000 towards widening one of our pathways that goes from San Pablo all the way to just past their project site. So again, we're trying to get multi-mode transportation connectivity between our future ITC and our current Hercules Transit Center. Part of that project, we're also going to be adding new bike lane striping along the entirety of San Pablo down to John Muir Parkway to their project. And then in 2015, we also began our Path to Transit project. And what that project was, if most of you know, Highway 4 actually dead ends into Hercules, which is John Muir Parkway. John Muir Parkway, we just completed the extension of that roadway to a future bridge that we just built called Bayfront Boulevard, beautiful bridge. And it ties into our future downtown. Those of you who are maybe familiar with Hercules knows we don't really have a downtown to speak of, other than a couple of our national registered places that still exist within our waterfront district. So that particular project, we literally, when we finished that project, we actually did a large segment, about I think 1,000 feet of creek restoration that was adjacent to the project, installation of a creekside trail that goes along our creek as well, and something called North Channel, where we had different drainage flows that needed to be treated before they hit our Refugio Creek. So we had a lot of the project involved environmental aspects as well. So with the approval of that project, fast forward to current years, we've actually issued about 40 permits with that new subdivision this fiscal year, and they just opened their model homes about a month and a half ago, and we anticipate the first residents will be in place in about a month and a half. So that project, finish one project, go into the next project and the next project. And with that Muir Point project, what we will anticipate is also that freed up and started to soon provide what's our interim transit service to our waterfront. So currently, Our west side of San Pablo has not had any fixed route bus services through WestCat. WestCat provides services to Pinole and Hercules, and it provides direct services to the BART station in El Cerrito del Norte, as well as direct connection link service to San Francisco. So as part of the completion of that Path to Transit project, we're looking at doing interim bus services at our future ITC site, which would be our future rail station. And at that particular site, actually next week, Tuesday, we actually sent out about 2,500 letters using our volunteers, folding and stuffing and putting things in the mail. And we're really reaching out to how do we create a more transit-oriented development friendly community in the waterfront. So even though our waterfront has a master plan, as we move forward, we want to get the community's buy-in as far as what do they think is necessary to have them better use transit services, whether it's where they offer their routes. So we're actually working with WestCat. They're actually coming to our meeting. A lot of planners are like, well, we're not quite sure what kind of meeting this is. So we're all kind of learning through the process, but we're very excited that we'll be able to have some real good input towards how do we make this work better for our community and our citizenry. Upcoming in this next year that you will be seeing as far as improvements to our current Hercules Transit Center, looks like we're are going to be awarded about $1 million through what's called WCTAC, our West Contra Costa County group, and it's, I guess, a subsidiary of CCTA. And that would allow us to extend sidewalks through a very, what I would call dangerous pedestrian area. Currently, people are walking with no lights, no sidewalk, in the street, in the dark, to get to the transit center. And we're adjacent to a community called Rodeo, which has a lot of lower income persons that don't have necessarily access to a car. And so for them to be able to cross over Highway 4, there's a sidewalk there. We, about a year and a half ago, were able to construct a sidewalk that continued down the roadway, and then we didn't have any more money to be able to take it the rest of the way to the transit center. So we're very excited for that particular project because it's desperately needed for really to encourage more people to use that route that they wouldn't use currently. Additionally, this fall we'll be starting construction of what's called the Bay Trail West project through an OBAG grant, part of our rail project. And some people say, why are you working on these trail projects? As we've been working on some of our trail projects, we've been also getting the retaining walls and making room for the third track. So about 3 years ago, we finished the first project along with East Bay Regional Park District to create the first massive leg, which also went by BioRad. They actually did an eminent domain to be able to get some of the right-of-way because they did not want to have that public access in front of their property. So we built that first leg of the project, and then we'll build this south leg of the project and then be able to work through what's called our fourth phase, which will be actually relocating utilities, adding a third track, adding a platform, and then they require I'll call it a kind of like a crossover into a center platform so that you're on the other side of the tracks when they do construction, but that's over a $50 million project. Thus far, we've probably spent 12 and 19 million for phases 1 and 2, but each phase has some independent utility in that when you add a third track, that will actually help with goods movement. So when you look at bottlenecks, if you go through Pittsburgh, Antioch, think of the Amtrak line, which is on the Union Pacific. When you come around that curve, you get to a little bit of a choke point because there's not enough sidings and what they call triple track. So each phase that we complete has independent utility. The first phase is, of course, making room for pedestrians to be able to come from Rodeo into Hercules, which the county is also working at connecting those trails up. Actually, Pinole is working on a project to connect the southerly portion of the Bay Trail. So again, we're trying to connect the pieces as we go through the various communities all for future rail service. So you may ask, how soon will rail service come to Hercules? Actually, we are currently working on it. I brought, I think, enough copies to hand out. So we've been collaborating with CCTA and working towards community outreach that really looks at what kind of ridership could we potentially be looking at in Hercules, and how would it affect Highway 80 to actually get more cars off of the highways and byways so that we don't have as much in place. So about 2-3 months ago, we actually did a telephone town hall meeting where we had over, I think it was 1,000 call-ins in about an hour-and-a-half period of time. So we also had various other jurisdictions. I think Mayor Butts was involved, somebody from one of the congressman's office. I can't think of, it's in the different district than our district, but there were 3 or 4 different other regional entities that have been working on this in support of getting a rail station, because it's not just about Hercules, it actually affects some of the other places along our Highway 80 byways. And when you look at it, most people don't realize is that by adding a Amtrak stop in Hercules, you would actually be able to take it to Richmond and transfer to BART. So instead of paying billions of dollars to extend BART north, which may take 20, 30 years before any of us will be able to see any of those improvements. And actually, our voters in Hercules have been paying into BART since the initial inception of the bond measures. So the way that they've backfilled in Hercules is at our current Hercules Transit Center. If you get online to get your ticket to the BART El Cerrito del Norte, it includes your $3 for parking for the day, and then it gives you 2 free tickets, one there and one back on the bus to BART. So that's how they've been kind of subsidizing some of what the people are already paid out, but for years people are, where's our service?
Are you aware that Oakley's putting in a little one?
Correct. I do understand that there's several different veins that are looking at, and when you say a little one, meaning a...
It's a kiosk, it's a stop.
And that's probably what we're probably looking at as well. So years ago, they had much more grandiose ideas, and I think the current team realizes there are financial realities that you have to be constrained with, and so that's what we're basically looking is restructuring it to how do you make it work financially so that it's really the most efficient system, you know, that's in place. And
yeah,
so,
ours is going to be a park and ride.
So we've been working very diligently at it, and it's been in our plans for many, many years, and it's nice to actually see some of these projects coming to fruition and completion. And even as our Path to Transit project is finishing up, we're hoping to, within 3 to 4 months, have that interim bus service be provided before we even have a train station. So the idea is that we're trying to get people more used to already taking alternative modes of transportation to be able to get them where they want to go. And then a couple of minor other things is just to let you know we've just approved a city block in our waterfront PDA. So that is looking at 172 units and about 7,000 square feet of retail. It will be part of an anchor to our future downtown, and it's located just adjacent to where this future ITC will be. And part of this particular project will start us down the path of looking at our future shared parking district. Through the development agreement that we have there, it actually requires that we actually work collaboratively so that you're actually sharing some of the private parking. So it's definitely a little bit different thought. Most people don't want to share any of their parking, but all of us had looked at that's the way that you get it done because you won't have to build it as large as you have to. And then the waterfront project actually has a 5% inclusionary requirement with their buildings. So we're looking at over a 10-year period of about 1,260 total units. of which 5%, which I think is about 65, 70, my math is not on tonight, units that would be for affordable housing. And then lastly, I heard the question asking about how do we meet future housing needs, and I think we've really seen it in the last several months. We actually last year issued our very first secondary dwelling unit as a standalone. In our promenade, we actually did incorporate about 1/4 of the housing stock with a built-in granny flat over the garage units, which has provided some very good affordable housing within that particular neighborhood. And now we're kind of going down the second phase as people are trying to figure out how do you do the secondary housing unit policies. And with the new law that came into place January 1 this year, it really puts some things into place that makes it more easy for people to either add them within their existing houses or to be able to add an actual secondary unit separate and apart from the house that can do a couple of things. One, provide affordable housing. Two, keep people in their houses longer, because if you go into retirement and you have a limited income, how can you subsidize that income? And we in Hercules, some of our older housing stock has large enough size lots to be able to accommodate those. It'll be a little bit harder in our waterfront district, but the hope is everything in our waterfront district will be multifamily. So there will not be any single-family detached homes at all in the entire 20 acres of our waterfront, and we have quite a bit of mixed-use development within our future downtown strip. So that's all I have for this evening, and any questions you may have, I'd be happy to answer.
So comments or questions, Mike?
Yeah, well, I was just looking at your RHNA by income level, and I noticed that you have above moderate, you're filling that requirement. And I was trying to follow along with why you were not able to fulfill the very low and low income. I know that your population's around 25,000 people, and I saw the demographics. Is it growing or remaining static, or are you
We've
losing
been
population?
remaining pretty static, and so we haven't really seen a heck of a lot of growth, just with the 43 houses that we had come on board last year. I don't even think I saw a ping in the DOF numbers, and I'm thinking, I don't know why, because usually you have 3 persons per household, at least, going in those sections. But the biggest thing that we saw is our 147 units that came online with the apartments, which we didn't have any apartments for probably almost 8 years at all. Is that originally it was started by the redevelopment agency with the intent of much of it to be for affordable housing. But when it went defunct, basically the project was considered failed, and city actually had to repay, I think it was home funds for that. We only had one taker to take the building to completion because it was a 2/3 of a shell, which went over multiple building code periods, and so it was a struggle. And actually, some people would have preferred it to be at that time demolished and taken down to the ground. But about $40 million was spent on it, I think, on the city side, and another developer came in and probably dumped in about another $30 million. To make it work. Biggest challenge was the below ground parking.
What about, I don't know, are your rents rising there at all?
They are. At the Aventine building, I was choking to see what their studios were running. $1,800.
Why?
For a studio.
Is the city doing anything to stop that or bring it down, or
they are
slow it
not.
down?
Again, because we're at 50 employees, we're barely surviving. And really, to be able to get as many projects done, we literally contract out for most things. We do still have our own police department, but we collaborate with Pinole, for example, for wastewater treatment. Of course, East Bay Mud provides water, PG&E provides electricity. We used to have our own electricity for Hercules, which was having a financial drain on the city.
So what I'm getting at is you don't have any ordinances for
We
rent
used
control.
to, and when redevelopment went away, they went ahead and permanently put that on the shelf because three things. One, city had to sell its properties as a requirement. We couldn't pay our redevelopment bond debt. And so city was sued by AMBAC. AMBAC required that basically all the proceeds from any of these land sales were to go to them, and they required them to be done in certain periods of time. So the city's hands were basically tied with most things to be able to even move forward. So they did rescind that copy, and when they did the waterfront project, luckily, the development agreement had a 5% inclusionary housing requirement in it. That's required to stay. And that does have low income, very low income provisions.
So there's nothing in place or nothing that you can do to help control the rising rents?
Not that we've seen from the city has not had any discussion on that particular point. They would literally have to put an inclusionary housing ordinance back in place. And I know when I've gone to planning law trainings about 3-4 years ago, at one time it was very difficult to get inclusionary housing back in board because you had to show a nexus study of how development required inclusionary housing. I'm not sure if that's changed. And I'm not from this area, but it would have to come from the council that would be a direction that they would like to pursue. So at least I'm hoping that through secondary housing units, that's one that's a little bit easier now that they have a model ordinance, and it's probably much more efficient to provide as far as a cost per unit.
So so are you even ever going to be able to meet the RHNA?
The RENA, what they're required to do is RENA, you're required to have enough zoned property to be able to provide that. The other thing that the state identifies is that they identify by having a certain density requirement on a per unit basis, that anything, I think it's over, can't remember, Central California, it was 20 units to the acre. The project we just approved is at 78 units to the acre. Aventine was at 80 units to the acre. So when they look at things, that's usually their threshold when they look at how much zoned land that you have versus zoned land versus the RENA numbers, meaning could it potentially be in there, but they don't require that you actually build that because cities aren't builders. So again, those are things that when I saw the numbers even this last go around, we just filed it in April, is that it showed that we were close to totally meeting the over and above moderate category, but none, I think just one in the secondary dwelling unit actually qualified, I think, as either a moderate or just below into the low income category. So it was like the very first one since the city built, because I think we built 2 affordable housing complexes, and so that's the last ones that the city, initiated as part of the redevelopment agency.
Madam Chair.
Mark?
I know you're making great progress, not quite where you want to be, but looking at what the situation Hercules found itself in several years ago, after a city manager and his family and complicit city council members basically enriched themselves tremendously at the city's expense and left the city holding the bag, I think you've made some tremendous progress. And I just want to say, congratulations, thanks, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? So I meant to ask the other 2 city planning managers and completely forgot, so I'll ask you. With the increase in population, I don't hear anything about schools being built. So we are, on top of adding an additional burden on our freeways and falling behind on public transportation and affordable housing. What are the plans for schools when you look at putting 80 units on 1 acre of land? I mean, talk about infill.
Correct. We have been working with our schools. I know every year. Usually they come and ask, what projects do we have coming on board? And our school district has continued to do, I'll call it impact fee updates to try to keep pace with some of those things on board. And in Hercules, they actually about 10 years ago built their first high school. Actually, they used to go to high school in Pinole. And so that came in place, and it was also a joint high school, junior high campus. So that's only about 10, maybe 12 years now old. And then we have multiple elementary schools. But what we've heard from West Contra Costa County is that they're actually seeing student numbers at the high school level actually going down. And what they think is occurring is that basically people don't have as much faith in the Contra Costa County school district, even though Hercules has some of the highest numbers as far as the stats are concerned for schools. A lot of people are pulling their kids out and putting them in private schools, is what we've kind of heard, which really exacerbates the problem when it comes to transportation, because people can be living in Hercules and going to Berkeley every day. And what we hear from WestCat, and this is the funniest thing, is that WestCat is constantly transporting those kids to different places to where they can then get to the next location. And so we're seeing and hearing about those impacts from secondary sources, but that's really the surprising thing. Now, the city does have one corporation yard site that could be a potential school site for either, but the question with Contra Costa County is they're not seeing the numbers to necessitate that difference. So either people are moving into the community without kids or having less kids, or they're not even going to the public schools, is what we're at least hearing. I'm not sure. I know actually one of our library community services district chairpersons is one of the employees of the Making Waves group. So I'm not sure how much they're pulling, but I think I did read recently that they were looking at, I saw in a CEQA log, I think they were looking at quadrupling in size. So I can't remember how many acres it was going, but I think it was quadrupling the acreage coverage, and they were also looking at the amount of students that they would serve would almost be quadrupled as well. So I wouldn't doubt it.
Other questions or comments? So we do not have a representative for Hercules. You want to bring that back to the city council, please?
Well, I was wondering, how does this board get appointed, or is it CCTA? I was trying to figure that out when I was looking at, and I saw vacancy. I'm like, okay, I have no idea what that means, and who does the appointing for that?
So usually the city will put an ad in the paper and on their website stating that there is a vacancy in the different committees that the city has. And then it would state an application is attached to it, and then the application would be sent to the city clerk. Then that gets reviewed, and the city council or the mayor at that point will then sign it, and then that will go to Diane, and that person will then be placed on as their representative for the next meeting.
And is there any time frame, or is it an open window, and how long are the terms?
4-year term.
Okay. Our planning commissions don't even get 2-year terms. So.
It was at the beginning only just 2 years. It got extended to 4 years. It's really up to the city council if they want to appoint a brief, but it is 4 years.
Okay.
So what we're hoping is that people will be in line and having the absolute vying to sit on our committee. We're a nice group of people.
Well, most of them.
Oh. I will
So
bring that back.
spread the message. And Diane is great, and so is Matt. Pizza's good.
Yeah, I know Diane and Matt, I can vouch for them, they're very
So,
good.
okay, so Holly, we do not have a representative for the city of Hercules. I've already given you my spiel on that. And I would like to then ask one of the representatives who has not had an opportunity to make a motion, to perhaps make a motion to accept the checklist. So, JP?
So I move that we approve the City of Hercules compliance checklist.
And do I have a second?
I second.
And so Mike seconds it. We have a first and we have a second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, nay? And anyone abstaining? Okay, so thank you. So Holly, you know the drill. June 7th?
Which I'll have a different representative going to, but he's done the GMP checklist before we.
Okay, they're a nice group of people too, but they will have questions, and their questions might be more detailed than ours.
Well, and that's why I took some of the notes down for what I shared with you this evening, so he would have at least a cheat sheet and hopefully be better prepared. But he is an adjunct planner, but he used to be one of our planning managers for with the city for 10 years, and we brought him back as an
Okay,
adjunct.
and then the 21st will be the authority. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Mike.
much.
We have one of our representatives who has to leave for personal reasons, so we will see you next month. Sorry? Yeah, there you go. Okay, thank you. Well, we still have a quorum. So the next person on the agenda is the city of Pinal. And this is Winston Rhodes, right? Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here and go over some of our growth management checklist issues and describe what's been happening in Pinal since the last time I was here, which was a couple of years ago. I think just a little bit of background. Pinal is approximately 19,000 people located in West Contra Costa County. We have Hercules to the east and Richmond to the west, and then there's some unincorporated areas of Contra Costa County nearby as well, both on the north of the community and the south of the community. The community is bisected by I-80 and also has San Pablo Avenue running through the community. We're the only community in West Contra Costa County that has an old town along San Pablo Avenue, which is something that is very well loved by the community and highly protected in terms of the character. You'll notice that we haven't had a lot of growth in Pinal and a lot of new housing. Part of that is we had a lot of development in the 60s and 70s, much like East County is experiencing in the last 2 or 3 decades. So what's left is very difficult sites to develop or sites that have to be redeveloped. So that is not as enticing to developers to come in and have to deal with an older existing site and trying to assemble small properties. As was mentioned by Holly earlier, there's also some challenges with West Contra Costa Unified School District. The fees, I've been told by developers, make it very difficult. They raise their fees every year. Our impact fees for the city haven't been increased since 2008. So we've tried to hold the line on that because we are really trying to promote affordable housing. We updated our general plan in 2010. We were the first city in Contra Costa County to have a sustainability element included in our general plan. And then, like other cities, we completed an update to that 2010 general plan update with respect to the housing element in 2015. So we have a lot of sites on paper that are suitable to add housing. We just haven't had the applications. We're starting to see now a few single-family homes. So we've approved probably about 5 to 10 recently, and we're getting regularly people coming forward asking about multifamily sites, but we've yet to receive those actual applications. So we can't approve what doesn't get applied for. And we've also experienced, we had a very proactive redevelopment agency prior to the state elimination of redevelopment agencies. So quite a bit of our housing stock is affordable because it was built with assistance from the redevelopment agency years ago. And many of those affordability controls are in place and in place for many decades to come. Some of the things that we have been seeing quite a bit of is since our housing stock is aging, we're seeing a lot more rehabilitation of existing units. So on the multifamily side, during the period that we're talking about with this checklist, we had 196 dwelling units that were where housing rehab was initiated. It's our Pinole Vista apartment project, 52 units, and then 144 units at the East Bluff Apartments. And those rehab efforts are going forward even today, where we're talking about some units that have balconies that are being removed, where there's been a lot of dry rot being replaced. Again, taking these units that were built new decades ago and rebuilding them and making them more energy efficient and enhancing them so that they'll be around to provide high-quality housing for decades to come. The other thing that we did notice is that we received certainly an increase in the amount of balconies being repaired or replaced. We had 54 balconies repaired and replaced during this 2014-2015 cycle. We also had 155 residential solar projects. So we're seeing a lot of people making use of the orientation of their homes and the fairly good weather in that part of in our community, and adding residential solar to bring their PG&E rates down. Again, trying to take older housing stock and make it more energy efficient, more modern. We in terms of building activity, what we saw is over 1,166 residential building permits were pulled. Again, this is mainly for people doing remodeling, doing additions, doing upgrades to their existing home. And there's a great deal of pride and ownership in Pinole. A lot of families have been there for generations, and we see second, third, fourth generation people living in some of those homes, and then maintaining them and enhancing them so that they can continue to live there comfortably as they age in place. And that's another trend that we're noticing in Pinole, is that Pinole's median age is older than Contra Costa County's median age, as well as the state's. So we're seeing a lot of people that are aging in place, and they like the atmosphere in Pinole. They can find a lot of services in Pinole. We've seen a lot of increase in medical services. Kaiser built a facility in the mid-2000s, and now we're starting to see applications for dialysis clinics and medical clinics to, I think, fill the void of Doctors Hospital shutting down and leaving the area, with certainly the medical service demand existing and probably increasing, because we have so many people whose medical needs are increasing over time with the baby boomers moving on in age. So I did also want to mention on the transportation side, we do participate in the West Contra Costa Transportation Advisory Committee. We do collect whenever we do have new development. Usually we're collecting sub-regional transportation mitigation program fees as well as local city fees. We also have seen a spike in commercial development. We had a new shopping center with the Sprouts built just recently, and we have an eye surgery center and a dialysis center that's going to be added to that area at the interchange of I-80 and Pinole Valley Road. Certainly an area you hear on the news about. That's usually where the heavy traffic going into San Francisco starts, on Pinole Valley Road. We've also have a new pharmacy, a new CVS pharmacy that's been approved, and we expect is going to start construction later this year. So, again, not the rapid kind of growth that you're seeing out in the East County, who I think are really growing very rapidly, but we're seeing more infill development. We have the zoning in place. I think the challenge for us, and Holly echoed this, is there is some frustration that people have been paying into BART for a long time. I know that there was that frustration in East County before eBART was extended out to Pittsburgh and now ultimately to Antioch and maybe beyond that. There's a lot of people that really feel that the West Contra Costa County area is underserved. We have one of the busiest, most congested highways in the nation at I-80. We all have experienced that, and a lot of people who are commuting from East Contra Costa County and go through 4 and on to 80 experience that, as well as people coming from Solano County. So it is something that we've been involved with some of the other cities through WICTAC in studying high-capacity transit improvements and upgrades in sort of a short-term, medium-term, and long-term, with hopefully at some point BART may be entertaining coming out and building an end-of-the-line station that's beyond Richmond and maybe into Hercules. So, I mean, that's many decades away, but I think that we've tried small project, remodeling project, use permit by use permit to make sure that transit information is disseminated and easily available at new businesses, so that employees and also customers know about some of the options of using WestCat and AC Transit to meet their transportation needs in the Pinole area. We also really spent a lot of time trying to make sure that some of our older shopping centers that didn't have a lot of bicycle facilities are now getting them, as those shopping centers again get remodeled and new businesses go in and older businesses go out. So again, trying to incrementally take an older community that was originally incorporated in 1904, built during the 60s and 70s, where the auto industry was really trying to encourage people to drive more, and now going to a more multimodal approach to try to ease the amount of congestion on the roadways, decrease vehicle miles traveled. So that's sort of an overview of what I wanted to present. I'm sure you might have a few questions. I'd be happy to answer them.
What questions do you have?
I do. I wanted to find out about your rent control issue. Did they recall that?
So what we've had on the books for quite a while is an inclusionary housing requirement, where we require 15% of any new residential development of 5 or more units to have 15% affordable units, with 30% of that 15 being for very low-income households. Since we've had that on the books, we haven't, when we had redevelopment, we could have a pot of housing set-aside funds to encourage developers to build the housing, and we did get a lot of affordable housing that way. We are finding that our market rate housing in Pinole is about moderate when compared to the rest of Contra Costa County. So there hasn't been a big push because we have a lot of people on fixed incomes living in the community, and we're not seeing, while rents are going up, they're not going up and escalating as much as they are in the newly built rental housing near BART or in Hercules, as was mentioned earlier tonight. So we've got a pretty good distribution of housing at various prices. We're also looking at our accessory dwelling unit ordinance, the secondary dwelling units, to see that as a way to get cost-effective, affordable housing in areas that already have services and parks and near schools that enable people to either live in the large main unit or a smaller unit and generate income in there as they need it. We're seeing also multi-generational households where people will want usually through additions rather than the secondary units, to have older relatives or the adult children move back and help keep the housing prices down or share that cost.
Oh, I know that the what was it, the Apartment Owners Association tried to recall that ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
Were they successful?
Since I've been with Pinole, it's the last 9 years, we haven't had a rent control ordinance in Pinole. I know that there's been a lot of discussion in Alameda, the city of Alameda, about rent control. San Francisco, has had it for a long time. Berkeley has had it for a long time.
Maybe I misread something. But
but in Pinole, it hasn't been an issue.
I have a question. You mentioned the accessory dwelling units, secondary dwelling units, the challenges that you face with developers looking at infill, yet at the same time, some of the multi-generational families living there. Mm-hmm. Has there been any interest with the city, or do you have anything on the books with maybe tiny homes or things of that nature that could provide or alleviate some of those needs?
Yeah, I think that there is interest. I think the thing that comes into play with secondary dwelling units or the tiny homes is we usually, in most cities, have an owner occupancy requirement for the property. The owner needs to either live in the small unit, the tiny unit, or the primary residence. And for some folks, that they don't want to be constrained by having that restriction there. The other thing is the cost of the development impact fees, and we're moving forward with an amendment to our accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and with the recommendation that just came on Monday night to our city council to maybe look at our fees and see about whether we should reduce those fees to encourage more accessory dwelling unit development. I think what happens now is rather than build the accessory dwelling unit where they have to pay development impact fees because they're creating a new dwelling unit, they just do an addition and add an extra bedroom and say, you know what, we can meet our needs without building a new kitchen. And that's how we're seeing more development or more square footage added on some of these larger lots that are throughout in the community.
I'm sorry, that was Richmond that I had referred to.
Oh, okay.
I misread something.
Okay, yeah, but Richmond has been having discussions about that, yeah.
Other comments or questions? So I have a funny story to tell you.
Okay.
A long, long time ago, a friend of mine took me down through Alhambra Valley Road and said to me, oh, we're going to come across this little town. It's called Pinole. And I, oh, cool. And it's been around for over 100 years. You're going to love it. Great. And so now we're on Highway 80. Where is it? And we passed it. What? Turn around, let's go back. And what I like about your area, your city, is that it does feel there's history there. Mm-hmm. It does feel comfortable. And I just got a real sense that people who live here have a sense of pride and connection. So I thought that your place was, Pinole is really a very fine city. I like hearing the fact that there's commerce, you're attracting commerce, and the reason I like that is because I think that for your surrounding cities, especially Rodeo, that you've got a labor market there that could find work. In Pinole, it's close to home. They don't have to travel that far. And I mean, Hercules, certainly, and certainly Martinez. So I'll be interested in seeing how that develops. Because when Doctors Hospital closed in Richmond, I thought, ooh, where are they going? I mean, somebody's got to offer services, and I think that your city is perfect for that.
Well, that site is still available. It's at the interchange of Appian and I-80, and we have mixed use there to allow for either residential or commercial mixed use. And then we also know that there's another our oldest shopping center that's anchored by a supermarket is also planning on going through a facelift and upgrading that particular location. So I think what we're seeing is some of that development from the 60s and 70s getting refreshed and modernized and updated. And I think the focus has been on this Pinole Valley Road interchange on I-80, and probably in the coming years we'll see more attention and more investment interest in that Appian I-80 interchange.
Yeah, keep my eye on Pinole.
Okay.
So we do have the member who lived in Pinole, knows Pinole, and he would like to make the motion to accept the compliance checklist, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, I happily, my wife and I bought our first home in Pinole in '89. Enjoyed living there for 4 years, corner of East Meadow Avenue and Nob Hill Drive.
Okay.
When what's the name of the big Pinole Vista ended at Osh.
Mm-hmm.
So, a while back.
Right.
It'd be my pleasure to move to approve the growth management plan for the city of Pinole for calendar years 2014 and 2015.
So I have Mark who is making the motion, and Chad, you wanted to second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we've got a first and a second to accept the Pinole compliance checklist, and all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
And opposed? And abstentions. So, okay, then, Winston, you've heard the spiel. June 7th, and then June 21st.
They're all on my calendar. Thanks very much.
Good. Good luck to you. Thanks. The next item on the agenda is committee reports. So, good night.
You guys carpool.
We're impressed. We're impressed. Okay, so Steve, you've got a report?
Yeah. If you don't have a copy, there should be copies up on the front table. There's not a great deal to be said about the last authority board meeting. Two major project-related items. One was to ready to finish up the specs and advertise for bids on the I-80 Central Avenue Operational Improvements Phase 1. And at the other end of the county, there was an adjustment to the joint utility trench relocation services for the SR4 Balfour Road interchange, which is actively under construction now. A lot of the other items were kind of authority functioning items. They want to transition from a paper-based bidding process to a cloud-based electronic bid process. And of course, the last item was to release the draft countywide transportation plan and the draft EIR for the countywide transport plan for public review. And we had some comments that are being forwarded to MTC for their regional transportation plan. We have a new deputy executive director, Tim Hale, I think is the pronunciation of his name. The only other thing I didn't happen to note it in the report, the authority just recently issued bonds. I believe they were priced on May 16th, which was the big drop in the markets that day. So for the second time in a row, I think the authority probably bottom ticked the interest rate it had to pay on its bonds. Talk about being lucky rather than good. That's all I have, unless there are any questions.
What questions do you have? As usual, thank you for your thorough report. Other comments from the representatives? Mike?
Yeah, Matt. Is there any reason why we couldn't reform our group to meet the Measure X standard?
Well, currently the role of this group is defined by Measure J, so we'd have to amend Measure J in order to do that, something like that. But I like to call her the chair, but she is semi-chair, ex-chair Vega, current chair Vega. Anyway, chair emeritus. There we go. As she explained, staff is actively discussing more roles for this committee. And there's some of the things she mentioned. It may also include fewer meetings when when it's not checklist season. But we, have meetings when we have presentations, of course, when we have checklists, but also giving you guys more of a role, whether it be at groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, any meetings in your local city where the authority has a presence, having you guys give reports on what your city is doing, as Chair Vega mentioned earlier. So we're actively trying to come up with more roles for you guys. But in terms of oversight, it is pretty well defined that you guys, your oversight is the checklist. So that will continue to be your primary role, but we do want to come up with more things so your time is well used. We don't always want you to have 4 checklists a night. It's a little much for all of us. As Diane and I, who have to review those checklists, we feel exactly the same because they all came in about a 5-day period. Anyway, but are we on staff comments yet? Because I do have something, item 4. But we will come back to you and probably at the end of the summer with some fleshed out ideas for your consideration.
Yeah, I hope that the members don't mind that I stay involved with this. I just jumped all over these ideas. I was really excited about it and wanted to continue to meet with you guys. So.
I have a question, Matt.
Yes.
I just want to know where the little autonomous shuttle is in Bishop Branch, because as you well know, since you put me on it, I actually rode on it.
I saw you board and ride, yep.
But it's not running at the moment.
I don't know the day-to-day status of it, but I know it's mapping. It's trying to basically memorize the entire layout of Bishop Ranch. So once it's ready for rollout to the public, not the public, but Bishop Ranch employees mainly, it'll know how to get from A to B. So it'll be going on kind of predefined routes that it's gone through and marked, every tree, every crosswalk, everything that it could come across. And so that little route that you rode, it had mapped that route ahead of time, so it knew what was around. And I guess at one point during the day, a armored truck came and parked in front of the building, but it parked in the Easy Mile Shuttle's route. So the shuttle came across and stopped and kind of reconfigured. And in the meantime, we asked the guy to move his truck, and then everything was good again. But we're in the baby steps of autonomous vehicles and how they kind of figure out their environment. So right now it's really about memorizing and mapping everything around it. I'm sure in a few years it'll be able to go out there and, there's an armored truck, it's not moving, I'll go around it, but right now we have to be kind of ultra safe and ultra cautious. But you will see it out, I think, in the next few months roaming around the campus.
When do we get to see Gomenham Station?
Okay, well, I have some news for you on a tour, but it's not Gomenham Station, though I am talking to Gomenham Station folks about that. But first on the list is eBART. So we've spoken to BART staff. They want you guys to have a tour. They're trying to get Director Keller out there for the tour. But what we want to do first is find some times that work for you guys. The only caveat we have is that it's got to be kind of during the day, business hours, kind of the 8 to 5. And we would like to get you out at your normal meeting time, maybe do it instead of a meeting, but Bart wouldn't be available for that. So what we're going to do is decide on some times with Bart at various times throughout the day, and we'll do a doodle poll. Diane will send you out a doodle poll so you can mark down which times work best for you. Hopefully we'll find a time that everybody can attend, but since it's during the day and I know some of you work, it may be a little harder, but we'll do our best to accommodate the entire committee out there, and then we'll be working on Gomentum Station next. So the eBART tour will be at the Hillcrest Station. They have we tour the actual station. There's a maintenance facility there that's pretty cool, and the actual trains. So that will be our next big tour that I hope people will be able to attend and enjoy. I've done it myself, and it's pretty cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
It's a really cool station. So yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned it because I know you were working on that.
Yeah, we've heard the request from you and
Several times.
Yes, several times. So we're on it.
Goody. I have a couple of comments. Number one, I asked that we have a certificate of appreciation given to Richard Mays for the time that he devoted to the committee. So I have the certificate here. I need to sign it. I have a certificate of appreciation for Dennis Fay for the time that he devoted to the Transportation Authority. So I thank you, Diane. I connected with Diane. I said, we can't just let people say, oh, thanks a lot, I'm leaving. No. So, and then I believe you have some letters of thank you also recognizing them. And I just think that that's important for us to recognize people, even if they've just stayed for a year. That's still time from their busy schedule. I do want to mention something that Matt had said. We talked about perhaps not having that many meetings. And so looking at perhaps quarterly. We're just sort of playing with this idea. And quarterly, unless something comes up that, Matt looks at it and says, we really need to meet. I know that we didn't have it scheduled, but we really do need to meet on this particular date. So as he puts these ideas together in a draft form, we can look at that. And once we approve it, I'd like to make sure that we all commit to it. Then I'd like to thank Stephen. And your reports, I've always enjoyed reading your reports. They've always, I think that they're thorough, they're detailed, and why do I have to go to the meeting? You go. You write it well. Good for you.
I have a quick comment, too.
Uh-oh. What?
I was looking at our vacancies. Of the 7 vacancies we currently have, 5 are West County cities. We have absolutely no members currently serving from West County.
And when Holly mentioned that area is under-serviced, sitting with Lindsay and Matt to see how we can encourage that area to have people come forward. Sorry, this is my 4th meeting. I've been just talking all day long since 7 o'clock this morning. And then for all of us, actually, when we attend any functions and we see that there's a mayor or a city council member who happens to be in part of that area that we have a vacancy, please feel free to mention it to them. Today I was with the mayor of Concord, and I thought, do we have a rep? Do we have a rep? And so I couldn't remember, and I said to her, I can't remember if we have a rep, but if we don't, you'll be hearing from me tomorrow. And she goes, I think you have a rep. And so that's good to know. I want to just thank all of you. It's been my pleasure serving as co-chair and chair I just think you guys are so great, and I really appreciate your support. So with that, I will allow our new chair to end the meeting.
This meeting is adjourned.